to order. The NVUSD Board of Education is holding a regular virtual board meeting tonight that all can participate in remotely. You can join via Zoom. Specific directions on how to participate are located on the Board of Education webpage on the district's website at nvusd.org/board. The open session part of the meeting agenda begins at 7 p.m. I'm opening for public comment on closed session items.
There are no public comments at this time, Vice President Gonzalez-Mares.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. I'm closing our public comment of closed session items. So seeing that there are none, the Napa Valley Unified School District will now adjourn into closed session. See you all at 7. Thank you. All right, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elba Gonzalez-Mares, and this is the Napa Valley Unified School District Board of Education. The NVUSD Board of Education is holding a regular virtual board meeting tonight that all can participate in remotely. You can join in via Zoom. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Elba González-Mares y somos el Consejo Escolar del Distrito Escolar del Valle de Napa, NVUSD por sus siglas en inglés. La Junta Regular del Consejo Escolar de NVUSD es de manera virtual, así puede participar remotamente. Se puede unir vía Zoom. Interpretation in Spanish is available for tonight's virtual board meeting. To access interpretation from a computer, click on the interpretation icon on the bottom of your screen from within the Zoom application. On a mobile device, click on the More button on the bottom of your screen and choose Language Interpretation from within the Zoom application. This is a separate channel that will allow you to hear English to Spanish translation concurrently. Please note, interpretation services are not available when you join our meeting by calling in. Our interpreters for tonight's meetings are Maria Isidra Mencos and Claudia Lindgren. Claudia, please translate the directions on our English channel so our Spanish-speaking families can hear the instructions.
Sí, buenas noches. Para tener acceso a los servicios de interpretación para la junta de esta noche, les vamos a pedir, por favor, si pueden fijarse en la pantalla. Tienen un icono que tiene el signo de mundo. Si pueden hacer un clic, un chasqueo ahí, les va a dar la opción de escuchar los servicios en inglés y en español. Esa es la mejor manera de tener acceso a los servicios por medio de Zoom. De otra manera, si lo quieren hacer desde su teléfono, entonces pueden utilizar el botón donde dice More y ahí pueden ustedes elegir la opción para la interpretación y de esa manera pueden escuchar la junta. Desgraciadamente, si llaman por teléfono por medio de una línea regular, no se pueden escuchar los servicios de interpretación. Gracias.
Specific instructions on how to participate in the meeting are located on the Board of Education webpage on the district's website, nvusd.org/board. Can we please start with an attendance roll call from Vera Morales?
Yes. Trustee Martin, absent. Trustee Gonzalez-Mares?
Present.
Trustee Jankowicz?
Present.
Trustee Water?
Present.
Trustee Hurtado?
Present.
Trustee Shunk?
Present.
Trustee Gracia?
Present.
Student Board Member Magaña?
Present.
Quorum present. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Thank you for joining us tonight in our virtual Napa Valley Unified School District Board meeting, held exclusively online. We continue in uncharted territory as we deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to thank our employees, our families, and the entire NVUSD community for how you have supported each other and come together during these unprecedented times. This meeting tonight is in accordance with the open meeting rules in the state of California per the governor's order. I'm going to start tonight with some basic instructions on how we are going to be using Zoom and involve the members of the community. All Board of Trustees and the Superintendent are on video throughout the entire board meeting. Staff members are present, but by audio only. Members of the community will not be on video and will be muted except during public comment. During public comment, any member of the community that wishes to speak must raise their hand using the raise hand feature in Zoom. You will be unmuted and will be provided 3 minutes to speak. There are 2 ways to make a public comment within the time allotted for public comment on an eligible agenda item. To comment by video conference, click the raise your hand button to request to speak when public comment is being taken on the eligible agenda item. When it's your turn to speak, your name will be called out. You will then be unmuted during your turn and allowed to make public comments. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Instructions on how to raise your hand are available on the district's website at nvusd.org/board. Comment by phone. You will be prompted to raise your hand by pressing *9. To request to speak when public comment is being taken on the eligible agenda item. When it is your turn to speak, the last 4 digits of your phone number will be called out. You will then be unmuted during your turn and allowed to make public comment. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Instructions of how to raise your hand by phone are available on the district's website at nvusd.org/board. In addition, community members are allowed to submit comments via email at publiccomment@nvusd.org. Up until 8 a.m. this morning. Public comment received after 8 a.m. the day of the scheduled meeting will not be read into the record. However, the public comment will be announced as received after the deadline, and it will become part of the meeting archive as long as it is received before the meeting is officially called to order. For every agenda item, I will prompt the meeting participants who have joined us via Zoom for public comment. Please follow the instructions just provided when you would like to comment on an item. Before we begin, I would like to thank everyone for their patience as we continue to navigate this new technology.
Vice President Gonzalez Mares, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Our interpreter, Claudia, I need you to mute. It's causing some background noise that's disrupting the sound, Claudia. Claudia, I need you to mute. There she is. Okay, thank you.
Speaking of technology, here we are. We're still navigating this. Okay, so we have been called to order and conducted our attendance roll call. We will go forward with our agenda. I would like now for please Trustee Jankowicz to report on closed session items.
Good evening. With respect to student discipline, every item of business to be discussed in closed session pursuant to Ed Code 35146 and 48912-20 Government Code Section 49060 and 49078 and the Family Rights and Privacy Act, Student Matters. The board recommends for the readmission for student 082-02020A, and I believe we have a roll call vote for each individual student.
Correct. Trustee Martin, absent. Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Water.
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Shank.
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
Thank you.
The board recommends for the readmission for student 08202020B. Roll call.
Trustee Martin, absent. Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Water.
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Shank.
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
Thank you.
The board recommends for the readmission for student 08202020C. Roll call.
Trustee Martin, absent. Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Water.
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Shank.
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
Thank you.
The board recommends for the readmission for student 08202020D. Roll call.
Trustee Martin, absent. Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz,
Aye.
Trustee Water,
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado,
Aye.
Trustee Shunk, Trustee Shunk,
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
Thank you.
The board voted in closed session to approve a settlement with SW Allen Construction regarding a dispute over payment for services performed in the amount of $8,000. On a motion by Trustee Shunk and second by Trustee Grazia, the board voted unanimously with Trustee Martin absent. The board voted in closed session to approve a settlement with Alpha G Painting, Inc. regarding a dispute over payment for services performed in the amount of $16,334.97 on a motion by Trustee Water and a second by Trustee Shunk. The board voted unanimously with Trustee Martin absent. In closed session, the board voted to approve a stipulation and settlement agreement with the Office of the State Controller in the matter of the appeal of 2016-2017 Program Audit of California Clean Energy's Job Act. Under the settlement, the district agrees to repay the amount of $339,179.76 in 8 equal annual installments, which is a reduction from the claimed amount of $399,035. The settlement was approved by a unanimous vote, and that includes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Jankowicz. We're now on to our flag salute. Trustee Gracia, would you please lead us?
I'd be happy to. Manny, if you can put the flag up. Everyone can please stand, follow me, or join me, I should say, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Trustee Gracia. We're now on to item E3. This meeting is recorded for live streaming and archiving on the district YouTube channel. For a detailed review of any meeting agenda item, the archive video can be referenced, located on the district webpage at nvusd.org. The public can join the virtual board meeting remotely via Zoom. Participation, instruction, and the process for public comment can be found on the district webpage. Now we need on to item E4, approval of agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Trustee Hurtado, second by Trustee Shunk. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. And now on to approval of minutes.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry, did you catch that, Vera? Who did a first and a second?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to item E6, recognition of visitors and employee organizations. Dr. Massetti, do we have any representatives here?
Yeah, I think I see President Gail Young of NVEA. Would you like to raise your hand, Gail, and greet everyone tonight? Manny, if you can unmute President Young.
Hello, all. First day of school, so exciting. I am so honored to be part of Napa Valley Educators Association and the wonderful job that my teachers and counselors and nurses were able to do today. They rose to the challenge of all of the things that are taking place with fires, with COVID, with having to learn a whole new way of doing instruction, and they're doing an awesome job. I've heard a lot of wonderful things, And I'm really glad that this is all taking, that we can do this. It's all about the kids. And I'm really glad that we have some really fabulous teachers and we work for a good district that understands the needs of what our students need and what our teachers need. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Young.
Vice President Gonzalez Mares, I do not see CSEA or NAPS present this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Musetti.
And I think we have one, before we proceed, I think Trustee Gracia would like to note something for the record. We may need to return back to an item really quickly, Vice President Gonzalez Mares.
Okay.
The way that we reported out the motions from closed, I thought that they happened differently than how we just reported them. I thought different people first and seconded those motions.
We first and second in closed session. Do we need to first and second in open session as well?
No, it was a reporting, I think a reporting. So Trustee Jankwitz, if you could go back to the SW Allen, right? And the,
I had Shunk and David, you first and second for the first. Hold on, let me go back. And then I thought I had Cindy and you for the painting. Let me go back to look at the proper names. Okay, are you talking about the Alpha G painting, David? Or
yeah, as I recollect, I had the first on, I think that one, and the second, as you said, on the other.
Okay, my apologies. I then will make a motion that we change you to the first on the settlement with Alpha G painting.
Do we conduct roll call again for that item?
I think to be clear, let's just restate it for the record. And we didn't roll call on that. That was just a statement of the vote, right?
No, it was a roll call.
Oh, okay.
Right, but it's sort of the equivalent of a correction of the minutes, which normally wouldn't be a roll call item, but.
However you would like me to proceed, please let me know what you'd like me to do.
Let's just do the roll call and check all the boxes in case. So Vera, would you guide us on the roll call?
Yes. Trustee Martin, absent. Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Water.
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Shunk.
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Item F, public comments on non-agenda items. Members of the audience may address the board on any school-related matter that is not on the agenda. The board will not take action on any issue raised during this section of the agenda, inasmuch as the board action is limited to posted agenda items. Speakers are requested to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Are there any comments that were submitted via email?
There were no comments today submitted via email.
Thank you, Dr. Mercedes. Mr. Ruiz, do we have any public comment items on public comment for non-agenda items?
Do not have any comments at this time, Vice President Gonzalez Mares.
Great, thank you. Item G, we're on to reports. Board of Education and Student Board Representative. Who would you like to start?
Well, it was the first day of school, and hearing from my peers, it went pretty well. As for the seniors, including myself, pretty anxious, but you know, that's kind of the only thing I really have to say. So far, so good.
Thank you, Student Representative Magana.
I attended the Google Classroom presentation on 8/11, and then on the 12th, I attended Seesaw. On the 13th, the supporting distance learning presentation. The 14th was the navigating the district website and parent portals. And then on the 17th, I attended the Welcome Back for District Employees. On the 18th, the Facility and Technology Committee meeting. And then also on the 18th, the 6th grade orientation at Silverado Middle School.
Orientación de sexto
I
grado.
wanted to give a shout out to all our parents, students, teachers, administrators, and support staff who have worked tirelessly to get us through our first day of virtual learning. I know this was not how we wanted to open the school year, but we were forced into a distance learning model. NVUSD met that challenge head on by spending the summer preparing under an ever-changing set of circumstances. That preparation has paid off today with students returning to classes for virtual instruction. At my own household, we experienced a few bumps this morning as we got our children online for their first classes. I expect that I'm not alone in having had a few bumps today, but I know that things will get smoother and continue to improve as we adjust to this new school year. I wish that the pandemic was the only concern facing the Napa Valley, but as a community, we are now threatened with wildfires, power outages, dense smoke, and even ash. I know that these additional challenges will make our distance learning tasks even more difficult, but believe that by continuing to work together, we are capable of rising to even this challenge. To those who have been displaced by the fires, I hope that you are able to stay safe as you seek new shelter. Our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Thank you, Trustee Gracia. I think Trustee Hurtado was going to say something and I spoke before, so I don't know if you wanted to go next.
I was just welcoming our student back. But I would like to express my appreciation for all the work that that our teachers have done to prepare for this, that our classified staff have done for this. So Mike, Pat, Dr. Massetti, please send along my thanks and appreciation for all the hard work that's been put into making this first day of school possible.
Thank you, Trustee Hurtado. Trustee Water?
Well, I too attended the Welcome Back. And I also, over the last 2 weeks, attended a couple of webinars with UCSF talking about schools reopening in the age of COVID. And we talked about children's mental health. And I really appreciated what Assistant Superintendent Pat Andrus Jennings said when we were welcoming the teachers back about, teachers, paying attention to our students and personalizing it and, trying to, make it personal, get to know the children, even though it's on a screen. And as many of you know, I started working at Napa High 20 years ago and worked there for 15 years before I retired. And I loved it. I was so excited to be working there, but I also felt very put upon because I didn't have my own classroom. And I was trundling around to 6 different rooms for my first year there. And something, that's an absolute picnic to what our teachers are going through right now. And I really want to salute them for being so adaptable and flexible. And I know they're doing the best for our kids. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Water. Trustee Jankowicz?
And I too welcome back everyone. This is the beginning of a school year like no other. Each year brings positive change, and I know this year will be no exception. I too want to express my gratitude to teachers, staff, and to the students who I know are going to embrace this as an opportunity for learning, and I think we're going to see really good things happen this year. I too went to some webinars, the policy update discussing the Title IX and other CSBA policy revisions.
A varios de revisiones de
Learning series offerings, the Welcome Back virtual coffee for faculty, and attended the Facilities and Technology meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Jankowicz. Trustee Shank?
I think Jose and Robin have covered everything I either did or thought. I did have the pleasure of watching Napa Junction continue to rise out of the ground all summer. and the work being done by our classified folks in getting our campuses ready for whatever comes. You know, I think we're as prepared as we can be. There was certainly activity on a number of our campuses from a facilities point of view throughout the summer, as there is every summer. You know, I don't know what else 2020 will throw at us, or even the early part of 21, but I think we're up to the challenge.
Thank you, Trustee Shank. Yeah, echoing what everyone is saying, I think for a first day of school, unlike any other, we thought COVID was going to be it, but there's more to face, right? Once again, we're facing and battling fires, and not just here in our Napa County, but across our sister counties, which many of our families and our staff have homes and friends and loved ones. So this complex fire is happening again in our backyard, in our neighbors' backyards. And I want to thank all the fire personnel and emergency responders who are day and night fighting this fire and protecting our families and homes and businesses. I also want to thank our NVUSD community. Thank you and gracias. The first day of school, I'm sure, did not go without its usual glitches. Instead of kids maybe not finding their classroom, is more about where do I click and where do I go. So I'm sure it's the technical difficulties that it runs on a first day of school, but it was really cute for me to see via social media, even my own staff just sharing pictures of the kiddos, you know, at their desk, in the kitchen, in the living room, you know, teenagers chilling with their hoods on, some wearing their PJs, some saying they didn't have to wear their shoes today. So just seeing lots of smiles, actually, and I think that shows the resiliency that our community is going, you know, showing us. And I think it made me think of, like, it takes a village to raise a child, and that has new meaning to me. It really does. It takes a village to raise a child. So and NVUSD is here, and we are taking this head on everything we can possibly do to provide the quality education our kids deserve. I had the pleasure to speak to our Napa County Board of Supervisors to advocate for funding on the CARES Act to childcare. Dr. Massetti couldn't make it to the public comment. Is a little bit set up very differently than ours, and couldn't quite get in. But I fortunately was able to get through and share thoughts about how important childcare is and how much it's impacting our staff and our families, and efforts to support that work is quite important, because that's, although it's a different kind of crisis, right? We have the physical mother nature crisis, and then we have the system crisis. Childcare is one of those. And it's something that we need to address as a community as a whole. It's not an NVUSD only issue. It's a community-wide issue, and it requires everyone to be involved in resolving and solving and creating solutions for something so important as the care of our children. I too participated in the morning welcome, very quick and sweet, because work needs to happen, and kind of like stay out of the way. So really a pleasure to be here with you all tonight, and I guess kind of a good sign that we don't have 1,000 people tonight. So it looks like things are going smooth in a much more doable meeting for us all. So that's all of our thoughts and comments, I guess, from the student, board representative, and our Board of Education. So now on to board representatives' reports. With Curriculum and Student Support Committee, that's with myself, Trustee Gracia, and Cindy Water. We did not have a meeting. Now on to Facilities and Technology Committee.
When our meetings are an hour and a half plus, you all know how difficult it is for me to condense. So I will do my best. I'll speak quickly. We had previously distributed 4,000 Chromebooks to elementary students, and we distributed an additional 1,000 Chromebooks last week. Secondary distribution takes place at the sites and students can schedule pickup. School is in session. Base station installment, 24 completed, 10 to go. Programming and testing, I believe, started today. We have completed phase 3 of our camera work and are deploying phase 4, which is the last large phase. We are anticipating functionality around October. We will be asked to approve the request for additional repeaters. This is a needs-based ask. It allows for appropriate radio coverage to ensure safety. Low-cost investment with a high rate of return, additional security for our students, and another important investment in tech facilities for the betterment of our schools and our children. Camera access, just some clarifications. Our SRO agreement allows for requested access but protects student privacy. This is not unfettered access. Cameras facing public space work as one kind of operational unit and do not have an expectation of privacy. The MOU clearly delineates between the two, and again, important investments to help ensure safe learning environments. We will all inhabit these schools again. The purpose of this committee is to update us on technology, facilities, and the progress of our Measure H dollars, to understand project status structurally and financially, to have a long lens regarding the work that still needs to be done in our district, and to have a deep understanding of the correlation between our facilities and the learning environment we want to provide for all of our students. Our current project goals are roofing, repair work, HVAC, and site work, which includes paint, passive travel. Phase 1 project sites include NVLA, Bel Air Elementary, and Northwood Elementary. Phase 2 includes NVLA, Donaldson Way Elementary, Alta Heights Elementary, and Silverado Middle School. Our goals are achieved when we address critical long-term issues and improve the overall health, safety, and image of our campuses. A constant in our meetings that we need to prioritize funding and staff for the long-term maintenance of our sites. This is and will continue to be critical work. We as a district are appreciative of our community's understanding of the important correlation between the upkeep of our schools and students' level of learning and engagement. Budget update on the UIP allocation, the updated implementation plan, $27,250,000, Fund 21 and Fund 35, both Measure H funds. We discussed change orders versus allowances versus contingencies. And to close out the meeting, we got to review the impact of our bond dollars at work. Napa Junction is moving seamlessly and is on target as projected to open in August of 2021. We are in the design build selection process for the ACMS student common area. Proposals are being accepted, interviews conducted, and as Trustee Gracia can personally attest to, moving of the library makes a phenomenal difference in the use of space. By using the design build method, we are able to separate out DSA submissions for efficiency as well as lockdown pricing in advance of market shifts. And that concludes my report on the facilities and technology meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Jankowicz. Now on to Finance Committee.
We have a meeting scheduled on October 14th, which is also on my schedule, my flight from Dubai home, but that's not happening, so I will be.
Oh. Grieving process there, Trustee Hurtado. You'll get back on a plane soon. All right. Now on to Policy Committee. We have a meeting actually next week, August 27th. And Special Education Committee, Community Advisory Council.
We have our first meeting on Monday. So I'll be reporting at our next meeting.
Great. Thank you. City of American Canyon Liaison Representatives.
I think we met before our last meeting, so there's nothing to report. And we already have the next one scheduled for the end of the first week of September, like the 8th or something. So we'll have something to report probably on the 10th when we meet.
Muted myself. City of Napa Liaison Representatives.
We've not met. We met previously and reported, I believe, last board meeting, so.
Yes.
Thank you. Town of Yountville liaison representatives?
We have not met and will not meet until January of 2021.
Great, thank you. On to superintendent and executive staff. Dr. Massetti?
Yes, so good evening, Napa Valley Unified School District trustees and community. And before I get started with the primary content of my report, which of course will focus on the first day of school, I wanted to take a moment to recognize and thank the Napa Valley Community Foundation and the Gordon F. and Marion J. Davies Endowment Fund, who notified us that NVUSD was just awarded a $20,000 grant to strengthen our district's AVID program, including funding for teacher training, college access student activities, and parent engagement experiences. We greatly appreciate the generosity and support from the community. AVID is an initiative linked to goal number 1 of our strategic plan, student learning, achievement, and access. So any support to advance that goal is much appreciated. Tonight is a special board meeting because it coincides with our first day of school for the 2020-2021 school year. And as you all know, today's first day of school was not a typical one, as many of the trustees have described. Although it was challenging to visit schools today and not see our students on campus filled with the first day of school smiles, curiosities, jitters, and excitement, today could be described as historic. Our entire school system launched a full day of virtual learning. And most importantly, I would like to mention that this launch, as many trustees had noted, was accomplished despite fires, evacuations, power outages, and smoke, all while the pandemic persists in the background. Our NVUSD community is just so strong. It's unbelievable to observe and watch. The fires and evacuations in our community have caused unsurmountable stress, worry, loss, and trauma for so many. Today, during a school visit, I spoke with an employee who lost their home yesterday, and she still felt compelled to be at work to serve the students at her school site. She didn't want to let the kindergartners down. Through that interaction, I was humbled and reminded that the NVUSD community is dedicated, resilient, and so hardworking. I want to thank Vera Morales, who prepared me and the assistant superintendents for our site visits today. Given the uniqueness of this year, we wanted to make sure that our sites felt supported by the leadership team here at the district office. So our executive cabinet team split the schools across the 5 of us, and we dropped off lunch for our principals and assistant principals, and we left treats for our office staff at all 28 of our schools. What did we observe while we were there? We saw principals, assistant principals, office managers, and other office support staff problem solving, providing customer service, removing barriers to accessing distance learning, one student, one family at a time. While we know that our teachers were tied up in Zooms, holding class for all of the 17,000 students that we serve. Everyone was calm, focused, steady, and determined to make the first day of school a success, even if NVUSD students were at home at a distance. In fact, according to our preliminary attendance data, even with these unbelievable conditions of fires, evacuations, smoke, we had a very, very strong attendance and showing today on behalf of our students. Our data is still preliminary and we're working through the attendance systems in this new format. But the majority of our students attended and some schools had very, very high attendance rates. So we look forward to sharing that data once it's more confirmed in the very near future. I want to thank you to the teachers, the support staff, and administrators who worked so hard to be ready for today. There's still so much work ahead that will require stamina, discipline, and ongoing learning, but I can guarantee that every member of the NVUSD team is up for the challenge. We will continue to do our best every day and improve our work every opportunity possible. Our communications team put together just a short, very, very short video that I'd like to share that captured the site visits and some of our students learning on day 1 from home. So I'm gonna quickly share my screen and hope that it works here. Sorry about that. So with that, it was a great day, and given the circumstances, it was a great day. And so I want to thank everybody for their hard work. So now let's listen to the highlights about the work happening across our divisions, led by our 4 assistant superintendents, who I know were busy delivering those lunches and doing lots of other things throughout the day to make sure that we had a very successful first day of school here in the Napa Valley Unified School District. We're going to start out with Assistant Superintendent Pat Andrew Jennings, who oversees the Instructional Services Division.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Massetti, and good evening, trustees. I have a presentation later on in our agenda that I'm looking forward to giving you a little bit more information about how we prepared to launch the 2020-2021 school year. So I will be giving you a more full presentation at that time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat. Next, we have Assistant Superintendent Dana Page, who oversees the Human Resources Division.
Good evening, Vice President Gonzalez-Maras, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Massetti. Well, first, let me say thank you for those photos of students, because I just realized in watching them how much I have missed seeing their faces, and we all really needed to just see that. So thank you. Also, last Friday, we reached an agreement with CSEA, which means we have agreements with all 3 of our labor groups in place. Yesterday, we held 2 meetings for CSEA employees to go over the MOU and clarify the expectations for work and working conditions during this pandemic. We spoke to more than 300 employees in these meetings, and we continue to field emails and calls and clarify and resolve issues for individuals. It's really exciting to see our school site staff and students join everyone else in returning to work and learning. I feel like we've been preparing a party for months, and finally the guests are all here. So I want to commend the many instructional support staff people who are filling in additional pandemic-related needs while we see what kind of instructional virtual classroom support will be necessary during asynchronous and synchronous learning time. This week, they've helped families verify their data, fill out free and reduced lunch forms, and enroll students. They're helping with health checks and material preparation and more. Many have also reached out to me to offer to do everything from childcare to delivering meals and supplies to families. I appreciate the tremendous show of flexibility and team spirit among our many classified employees and of course, all of our employees in these really challenging times. So thank you. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Page. And we have Assistant Superintendent Rob Mangwala, who oversees business services.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update for my division. Kay Bain, the Executive Director of the Business Services Department, is leading the conversion of our financial system to Escape, which will provide a better experience for all employees. They are also actively working on the unaudited actuals, which we'll bring to the September 10th board meeting. Manuel Reeves, the Chief Technology Officer of the Technology Department, is leading the deployment of thousands of Chromebooks to support distance learning and ensure that every student employee that needs a device has one. Chris Gross, the Director of Accountability and Enrollment Department, converted to our paper process to an online process, both for enrollment and for our data confirmation. This created tremendous efficiencies, and it is very customer service oriented. Peter Aboud, who will hear from later tonight, the Director of Data Services and Assessment, has worked very closely with the instructional services and to identify assessments that will support our blended learning platforms and provide teachers with actual data that they can use remotely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mangwala. And lastly, Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Mike Pearson, who oversees operational services.
Good evening, Vice President Gonzalez-Maras, NVUSD Board of Education trustees, Dr. Massetti, and members of the NVUSD community. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update with operational services. Before I report out, I want to again acknowledge all the employees who comprise the Maintenance and Operations Department of Napa Valley Unified, and I appreciate the shout out from some of the board members today too. M&O employees continue to meet the challenge of ensuring our school sites meet specific health and safety guidelines through an incredible amount of hard work, dedication, and flexibility. M&O employees have done an exceptional job preparing our school sites, which welcomed back teachers earlier this week. I can't thank each employee enough for taking on the responsibility of providing safe spaces for NVUSD employees to return to work. Tonight, my report will focus on food service and transportation. And today was the first day of distributing food to NVUSD students. Grab and go meals were offered at 7 NVUSD locations: Napa and Vintage High School, McPherson, Shearer, Snow, and Phillips Elementary School, and American Canyon Middle School. Approximately 1,200 meals were distributed today, which is an excellent start, given that students now have to provide their ID number to receive a meal. We do not have the waiver with the United States Department of Agriculture where we could distribute meals without any kind of ID requirement. I would like to recognize our new Director of Food Service, Julie Chesson. I think Julie has seen her yet. She's there. So welcome Julie to the board meetings for a successful start to the new school year in our food service program. Additionally, food service and transportation are teaming up to deliver meals to students in Yountville and the Lake Berryessa region. Today, 20 meals were distributed in Yountville, and unfortunately, meals could not be distributed up to Lake Berryessa due to the evacuations. Finally, transportation did deliver meals to the homes of 66 special needs students. And thank you to the Director of Transportation, Terry Guzman, for organizing the trips and drivers to deliver the meals. Food service and transportation are going to continue expanding their partnership in the near future as we offer home delivery to more special needs students and students who attend our community eligibility provision schools. And then finally, as I always like to do after something like our first time going through things, the operational services team conducted a debriefing to discuss what went well, what needs to be improved, and how we're going to address these areas of concerns as it relates to the food distribution. We had a really good meeting, and we are ready for Monday to implement some new things. That concludes my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. That concludes the executive staff's reports.
Thank you, everyone. We're now on to item H, approval of consent agenda.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
A first by Trustee Gracia, a second by Trustee Hurtado. All those, roll call, please.
Yes. Trustee Martin, absent. Trustee Gonzalez Mares.
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz.
Aye.
Trustee Water.
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado.
Aye.
Trustee Shunk.
Aye.
Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
Student Board Member Magaña.
Aye.
We're moving now to item I, presentations and discussion items. Item I.1, instructional services, launching the 2020-2021 school year and getting back to learning presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Ruiz, can you share the slide presentation? Good evening, Vice President Gonzalez Martis, trustees, and Dr. Massetti. Today was launch day, the first day of school. The planning for this day began when schools closed in June. During the months of June and July, the COVID-19 response task force and district leadership worked to define how school would reopen this year. You have seen the various iterations of that planning, and today that planning resulted in a successful launch. Our presentation this evening will walk you through the steps taken to successfully start this new school year. Tonight you will hear, next slide please, sorry. Tonight you will hear from Matt Manning and Peter Hartneck, the directors of Curriculum, Instruction, and English Learner Services for elementary and secondary. They will share with you the work done with site leaders and teachers to strengthen our delivery of high quality distance learning. Terry Lynn Rossetti, the Executive Director of Special Education, will follow. She will share about how we prepared to improve our support for students with special needs. And Sarah Knox, the Director of Intervention and Prevention, and Mike Mansway, the Director of Student Services, will round out our presentation. Based on the feedback we received from our efforts in the spring, we knew there were several actions we needed to take to be prepared for this school year. Next slide, please. As we began the work of preparing for the new school year, we knew we needed to provide more robust tools. You will hear tonight in a separate presentation about those new and improved tools and platforms that were purchased to increase student engagement and lesson content delivery. We also heard from our teachers that they needed additional professional learning to be prepared to teach in a distance learning model. And we also heard from our parents that the spring was challenging and they felt ill-prepared to help their children with virtual learning. Next slide, please. We also received additional requirements and expectations from the California Department of Education, the CDE, that needed to be implemented this year. The new requirements include expectations of daily live interaction with students, that attendance be taken each day, and that students receive a minimum of daily instructional minutes. For kindergartners, that's 3 hours per day. For grades 1st through 3rd, that's 3 hours and 50 minutes a day. And for grades 4th through 12th, it's 4 hours per day. The state also requires that instructional minutes that were not accounted for during the synchronous or live instructional time would need to be documented on a weekly student engagement log. For example, a student in grades 4 through 12 have a requirement of 4 hours of daily instructional time. During the course of the day, with the schedules that we have, students receive approximately 2.5 hours of instruction synchronously from their teachers. And then they're provided classwork for the 90 minutes or so for their asynchronous learning time. So more specifically, for a high school student, they would be assigned an additional 30 minutes of asynchronous work for each class period they attend on a given day. Next slide, please. The CDE also required that school districts ensure that students are engaged and that districts provide additional support for students in need. Director Mansway will share the proactive efforts we took before school started and the plans we have moving forward to ensure that all students are engaged in school, that they have Wi-Fi connectivity, and that they have the specific supports that they need to be successful. Additional funding was allocated to the district to assist with some of these extra expenses associated with these efforts. At the next board meeting, you will learn more about how we plan to meet those needs in the learning continuity and attendance plan. This plan will replace the LCAP, or the Local Control and Accountability Plan. So for tonight, you will hear about how we provided more robust tools, how we prepared our instructional staff, and how we prepared our families for this new school year. Next slide, please. I will now pass the presentation on to the incredibly talented and hardworking team of directors from the Instructional Support Services Division, who will share how we prepared to launch the 2020-21 school year. Next slide, Director Manny, you are up.
Thank you very much. Good evening. So this summer, leading up to the start of the school year, we spent significant time preparing for both the 2.5-hour synchronous learning block as well as the asynchronous learning time. So for the synchronous learning time that's addressed on this slide, a group of district academic specialists and teachers worked together to create exemplar lessons for both English language arts and math in an effort to support teachers at the start of the school year. So the team developed these lessons as a template for use by teachers who would continue working as grade level PLC teams to develop those lessons ongoing throughout the year. Last week and into this week, professional development was provided to teachers focused on the use of these lessons, and that was provided to teachers all teachers across all schools, grades K through 5 throughout the district. So these exemplar lessons contained embedded support for English learners, such as enhanced vocabulary instruction in both the English language arts and math lessons, and language frames are included to support the use of academic language for students throughout the lessons. The NVUSD Wellness Playbook contains lesson support for teachers as they build social emotional learning into their classes. Intervention teachers will be providing small group intervention support based on MTSS team decisions and recommendations, along with designated English language development instruction will be provided by those intervention teachers. Next slide, please. So with regard to the asynchronous learning time, suggested schedules have been shared with families regarding how they can use the additional asynchronous learning time throughout the day for the time that the students are not under the direct guidance of the teacher. So we've intentionally built in opportunities for both offline and online learning during the synchronous time. Part of this time, students will be working on Dreambox Math and Imagine Learning, which you'll hear more about from Sarah Knox and Peter Aboud in their presentation. And we were able to offer expanded daily PE lessons with our elementary PE teachers. So students in grades TK all the way through 5th grade will have access to a daily lesson with their PE teachers. And these lessons will have students getting up, moving, and connecting again virtually with their peers and their PE teachers. So we're excited about that expanded offering. 4th and 5th grade students will continue to have weekly music classes. Mystery science lessons that teachers may assign will provide students with more hands-on activities and learning, and that will be partially away from the computer screen as well. So daily reading expectations and strategies such as choice boards, or what we might call may-do activities with a variety of online and offline activities, are another element of the asynchronous learning time that teachers are building in. So I wanted to just share one success story from a site today. I spoke with a TK teacher this morning who had just finished her Zoom class with her students. And during this first day's lesson, she was able to think quickly in providing on-the-spot tech solutions for her families and students as the students were logging in. She had most of her students in class with her today, which was exciting. And she was already teaching them using a mix of both direct instruction and the independent work time that we know will make the virtual learning successful. So as part of her lesson, she asked the students to step away from the screen and go find something red in the house, a red object. So while they were off finding their red items, she was able to quickly help a few other parents gain access and then engage with all of her students in a dialogue about the items they had found. I would call that a successful first day. So I just want to applaud this teacher's perseverance, and I know that that perseverance and success is being replicated throughout the district at both the elementary and secondary sites. So with that, I'd like to pass to Director Hartneck to talk more about secondary sites.
Thank you very much, Director Manning. There is a tremendous amount of complexity in the secondary education, with students having between 6 and 8 classes on their school roster. With this complexity comes the need for strong communication and collaboration between all of the school leaders as we were planning for the opening of school today, August 20th, 2020. I'm proudest of the collaborative spirit amongst our principals and site leaders in general. This has been a truly all hands on deck situation, and our leaders have truly risen to the occasion. In our professional learning week, secondary subject level roundtables in mathematics and science help to inform our district leadership of the specific needs of our teachers, both in intermediate, also in the long term. Our secondary learners, principals and assistant principals, leaders, principals and assistant principals, have been leading direct district-wide work groups with administrators and teachers to help us determine best practices for instruction, both synchronous and asynchronous, the specific needs around physical education and visual performing arts, as well as the logistics that has brought us to the first day of the 2021 school year. All of these efforts have been collaborative and shared amongst the secondary sites at the district to learn from each other and to find those best practices to support families and students. In addition to the distributed leadership evident as we collectively open school, we've also been bringing teachers and staff together to evaluate myriad tools to support distance learning. Many of these tools we focused on supporting the engagement of teachers and students in the virtual realm. There's also a wide variety of specific supports for our students with specific learning needs. To that end, I will pass the presentation to my colleague, Executive Director of Secondary Education Services, Terry Lynn Rossetti.
Good evening, everyone. In the Special Education Department, we are committed to continuing to provide all services to students who are eligible for special education to the greatest extent possible in light of our current public health guidelines. This year, we have added curriculum that will provide consistency for students between phases 1 and 2, as it can be used for both in-classroom and distance learning, collecting data on progress in both settings. After spending 2 days in professional development, teachers have expressed excitement about the implementation. For students in our mild to moderate classes or resource programs, they will be adding IXL for English Language Arts and Math. For students in the functional skills classes, they will be using Unique Learning System, which provides lessons aligned with core standards in a modified format. Our speech therapists will be using a program called SLP Now, which allows for distance data collection, and boom cards, which allow them to target skill-based lessons. As we settle into school, we will be adding workbooks for pencil paper tasks for our students with mild to moderate disabilities and hands-on tactile kits to support our functional skills students. Additionally, as we start the fall, we have been given approval from our Napa County Public Health Department to meet with students individually for special education assessments and progress check-ins or individual student services on an as-needed basis. This is our first step towards the governor's recently released guidance on bringing students back in small groups. Next slide, please. The week of August 17th, we also held professional development targeted for our special education staff, including information on adding emergency learning plans to our IEPs as we move forward, supporting families with video conferencing for IEP meetings and electronic signatures. The emergency learning plans will describe how the services in each IEP will be implemented during any emergency where we are not in school buildings for more than 10 days. So right about now. We are focused on increasing communication with staff and families. As a district office team, we have modeled this through our increased job-alike meetings with both the executive director and the coordinators. For families, we held a parent training to support our new electronic IEP signature format. In addition, we are working closely with our community partners to support families. I had the opportunity to meet with the staff at Parents Can last week. They are committed to continue to support our families alongside the district so that all can fully participate in IEP meetings. Moving forward, we look forward to our first SELPA Community Advisory Committee meeting on August 24th. The special education team will also continue with monthly parent trainings to support in specific areas of request. For example, we are currently working on a series to help parents provide positive behavior supports in the home learning environment. I will now pass to Director Knox, who will share more about the professional development that our certificated staff participated in.
Thank you, Director Rossetti. Good evening, everyone. In addition to my role in the instructional division, I'm also a proud NVUSD parent of a 6th grader who started middle school today. So on this most extraordinary first day of school, I just want to extend my sincere appreciation to everyone in our organization for remaining dedicated to our students and families in the face of so many challenges. And I was really pleased to see that dedication highlighted and illustrated in the Napa Valley Register today. So as part of our reopening plans, we organized a week-long opt-in distance learning lab for educators that took place last week. We offered 106 sessions in various topics and content areas for teachers, and we were thrilled and overwhelmed with gratitude because we had over 4,363 sessions attended by our teachers and staff. The most attended session last week had 183 people in it, and our average session rating was 4.5 out of 5. So we felt like that was all great, but what we really were working to get out of that week was increased teacher confidence, and that really is priceless. One of our teachers in the feedback form said that in her 25 years in the Napa Valley Unified School District, this was the best professional learning that had ever been offered. But truly, we just wanted to set our teachers up for success. And we felt like we were able to tap into our own talent and collective efficacy because we had 90% of the presenters during this distance learning lab who were our own NVUSD educators and staff. We really do have a talented workforce here. We also wanted to begin developing innovative approaches to professional learning in this COVID environment. So offering it all week long instead of on one specific day gave people a voice and choice and allowed them to customize their professional learning based on their availability during the week. Zoom made it accessible to all, and we had the ability to record to the cloud and memorialize sessions, which meant that the learning is not going to stop now that the week is over. We've had over 600 sessions and counting viewed since last week from the recordings. We selected specific sessions and used those recordings to provide consistent, essential training sessions across our system over the 3 professional learning days this week as well. So I wanted to provide just a few more teacher quotes from the week. Thank you again for giving us this opportunity. It was great to see how many of our coworkers are so well prepared and willing to share with the rest of us their knowledge. I hope we can repeat this very soon. I was able to realize that all teachers have the same feelings as me and that we are in this together. We will make it work. Next slide, please. Next slide. In addition to preparing our educators with teaching and learning tools, we are prioritizing mental health and wellness for our students, staff, and families. Our team of social workers has worked hard to develop a distance learning wellness playbook that includes attendance and engagement resources to support students who had difficulty in the spring with attending class, staying engaged during these challenging circumstances. This playbook also includes resources for wellness and telehealth, crisis-related protocols that have been modified for COVID, and it also includes community building and relationship building activities and scripts for teachers to be able to use as they start to develop a community in a distance environment, which can be challenging. In addition to the distance learning wellness playbook, we developed trauma-sensitive schools training and delivered that to all administrators and teachers over the past 2 weeks. We will also continue to provide ongoing professional development in this area because throughout the school year, because we feel like it is a top priority during these challenging times that we're in right now. Next slide, please. We also convened a summer work group that created a blueprint over the summer for mental health and well-being for all that we provided administrators and site MTSS teams, multi-tiered system of support teams, so that they could have a well-developed social emotional re-entry plan that would give them the best opportunity to create safe and supportive school climates as we reopen for 2021. This blueprint also provided a straw design for this ongoing multi-tiered system of support teamwork, including a focus this year on screening and identifying students who need services. So universal screening for social emotional wellness and mental health. The blueprint also provided a specific outline and straw design for coordinating services across our organization and also with the community. Next slide, please. So I'm now going to toss it to my colleague Drew Herron from Child Welfare and Attendance, who will discuss our attendance outreach efforts to engage and support students. Thank you.
Actually, this is Mike Mansway, and I'm going to be addressing this.
Okay. Hi, Mike.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, and good evening and Happy New Year, everybody. Mike Mansway, Director of Student Services. And Drew is here virtually. and participating in this as well. So I do welcome you all here. Before I share what we're doing, I want to tell you I met with all of our assistant principals this afternoon after our school day concluded. I asked them to assign a temperature for the day. If 98.6 is a normal temperature, what temperature reading would they give today? And pretty much universally, they all said they all started with a fever today, but by the end of the day, everyone was around 98.6. So I think that speaks to our perseverance and how we go about solving problems. You know, we've done a lot of great work. We have a lot of great plans, but none of this matters if we can't get kids to school. And so we had a pre-school year strategy of identifying those students in our spring distance learning experience who were not engaging, and we worked with sites to identify those kids, and we came up with a list of about 700 kids. We enlisted the support of our parent and community liaisons, and their job was to make personal contacts with each of those students and families. And so we're still working on that. We haven't gotten through all 700, but we've gotten through a lot of them. So far, based on these contacts, what we're learning, or at least what people are sharing with us, the most frequent mentioned barrier that comes up is some kind of technology issue, whether it's equipment, internet access, or even a need for better understanding various learning platforms. When it's possible, the parent liaisons are providing on-the-spot support with things like immediate IT referrals and setting parents up with the appropriate parent engagement sessions and so on. Could I have the next slide, please, Manny? So that was our preschool strategy. Now that school's open, we have an opening school protocol. And basically, for the first 2 weeks of school, we're in full court press mode. And that means every day, each school site is identifying students who are not there, who are not engaging. And they're reaching out to those students daily. So each day they're identifying, they immediately reach out to the students or families who aren't engaging, with the hope of identifying whatever barriers there are and what support they need. Of course, there will be some who are unresponsive, and for those who are not responsive, they get referred to Child Welfare and Attendance Office for follow-up. And that's Drew's team. And Drew and his team will try to make contacts via phone, email. If they can get a hold of someone, set up a virtual meeting. If those attempts are unproductive, then we do conduct home visits with child welfare and attendance folks and/or social workers, and we have COVID protocols in place for those home visits. So these efforts will hopefully lead to a personal contact, and I'm sure we all know this, research shows that a personal contact is the most single effective way to re-engage families with school. So if no personal contact is made, of course, we will leave information at the family's door. After 2 weeks of this full court press mode, then we will resume our regular attendance system, which includes things like SSTs, SARTs, and SARBs. And with that, I'm going to, I think, turn it back to Pat Andre-Jennings.
Thanks, Director Mansway. Yes, and I did want to actually add a little note that we do recognize that some of our families, due to what's going on right now with evacuations and just all that's happening, that they may not be able to engage. And so we are taking a very sort of a compassionate approach to those families that may have been impacted and been evacuated, especially in the Lake Berryessa area. So, engaging and preparing our families. We knew that distance learning to be successful, we recognized that parents need to be prepared as possible to assist their children at home. And last week we offered a parent learning series that included 25 sessions, both in English and in Spanish, that were co-facilitated by parent liaisons, teachers, site leaders, and district staff. Some sessions were like an overview of the distance learning schedules and describe what distance learning would look like this school year. Others detailed how to access Google Classroom, or what is Seesaw, what does it do? We had several classroom teachers who not only taught during the distance learning educator lab, but also taught and presented sessions in the evening. They were doing double duty, both working day and night, to make sure that our parents had the information that they needed. And it paid off. We had over 2,000 parents participate in the sessions. And it was great to see parents modeling for their children the importance of being a learner. They asked good questions, and we often ran well past the scheduled end times just to make sure that parents were given the information that they needed and had the time to ask those questions. And finally, I want to mention what a tremendous job our teachers, site leaders, and school staff have done to prepare for today. Countless hours have been spent by teachers and site leaders to learn the most effective way to implement robust distance learning. I particularly want to comment on the successful virtual parent forums and orientation school sites have hosted for their school communities, all in preparation for today, launch day. Next slide, please. Fires, power outages, and evacuations did not deter us as we began school today. District leadership was out and about at school sites, and today, some of the things they saw, instead of a principal or teacher sort of calming a kindergartner who's being left for the very first time, we witnessed a principal maybe calming a parent on the phone and walking them through how to get onto Google Classroom. So it switched up a little bit, but the day is still the same. Today was not flawless, but the new school year has launched, and we are currently soaring into what will be most likely a very unusual school year. Next slide, please. This year has started, but we have work ahead. I'm looking forward to sharing more with you in the coming board meetings about our literacy initiative and our equity work. Thank you. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Any questions from the board or comments?
I have a comment. I really like the part about 90% of the presenters were our homegrown talent. I saw Jody Ortiz from Donaldson Way in one of the slides, and I've visited her classroom and volunteered there, and we have lots of teachers like her, very good. So thanks for that.
I have a couple questions. What is a mystery science lesson?
So I can respond to that. A mystery science lesson is a program that we've purchased for all of our school sites. And the lessons begin with a teacher-directed element of the lesson, and then there's usually a video that accompanies that, and then students are directed to do some hands-on learning or just some element of discovery on their own. So all of those lessons can be pushed out into Google Classroom. So we're adapting those for our online virtual setting.
And I wanted to add a little bit to what Director Manning said, is that Mystery Science is a good example of something that individual sites had purchased, and it was kind of hit or miss whether which sites had Mystery Science or didn't have Mystery Science. And so we made a decision at the central level to provide Mystery Science to all of our elementary sites, given that we are still in the process of piloting a new science curriculum. So we wanted to make sure that they had some tool that they could use and that it was, district-wide for elementary.
Okay. What was our PE solutions at secondary, and are we already curtailing it due to smoke?
Director Harnack, do you want to respond to that in terms of what we're doing for PE instruction at the secondary level?
Sure, absolutely. At this point, with people being at home, a lot of the work has to do with creating plans that allow for students to engage in some sort of physical education that would align to what they're able to do at home. And this wouldn't be necessarily dissimilar to what would be happening if we were in person, but still in a phase 2/phase 3 environment, where we're not able to necessarily hold classes inside. And so you have a limited amount of sports and activities that you're able to do. And so a lot of what we're sort of forced to do now is talk about things like nutrition, which is very relevant, but also to develop plans for students, to have workout plans, to have daily exercise plans, and things like that. That will be a different way that we interact with physical education, but not necessarily less good. And I think a similar question could probably be asked, Trustee Gracia, around visual performing arts, because there's a number of questions around how do you have a vocal quartet or a chorus in a Zoom environment? How do you have an instrumental program over Zoom? And so we are looking into a number of programs that have been selected by the teachers that should support them in that realm. And so a lot of the instrumental people at secondary level are going to be utilizing something called Smart Music, which we've had a partnership with the Napa Valley Educational Foundation, as well as with our own resources to support both the middle and the high schools in that regard, to support students in being able to have some independent practice that's being given some very good, very immediate feedback. And then some of the secondary, particularly at the high schools, the choir and the choral programs are being given some different resources to be able to help them take in what they're able to get with Zoom, and to be able to curate that into something that is performance-based, so that the students have something that can really be a product of their work throughout the semester. And the choral, the directors are very committed to that. And it's something that we've been working with all of the directors to make sure that we have equity as well amongst the different school sites. And I appreciate the question. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you going into the VAPA, because that was going to be my next question. So that was a good choice there. Thank you. I do have one more. How do we support our IEP students who have gross and fine motor skill goals in our distance learning environment?
That's a very good question, Trustee Gracia. Director Rossetti?
I am here.
There you go.
Our occupational therapists are working with students who are eligible for those services, and they are working with them either via Zoom with support of identified tools that they are going to be distributing home to those families. For students who need those individual check-ins or individual services, they will be making appointments with them on an as-needed basis.
I have a quick comment. I've had numerous phone inquiries about our 144 instructional minutes. I have received screenshots of school schedules that have implied other districts were executing all synchronous instruction rather than our schedule, which also has an asynchronous portion, as Pat just described. In regard to the few that I have had time to research, looks like they too have asynchronous minutes, and they are interjected throughout the school day. They don't make it clear on the schedules that are being presented visually. And I just want all the individuals that have contacted me to know that, that we are committed to not only transparency in how we're doing this work, but to the beneficial aspects of our approach. Our teachers are teaching bell to bell. There is a smaller class size that allows for more personalized engagement. It's difficult for students to sit for countless hours, 6 hours in front of a computer, and the asynchronous opportunity allows for creative and independent programming options. And Pat, do you have any comments on the instructional minutes?
Yes, I think that the model that we have created does allow, like you said, for students to have some time to sort of, like, if they don't want to do the asynchronous part in the afternoon, maybe they want to do it later on in the evening, that they have the option to do that. The other piece is that because our teachers are teaching bell to bell right now with the AM and PM cohort, when we do transition to in-person, it'll be far more seamless than if you have a schedule where you have all the students, going full day, all day long. And then pedagogically, it is not, as you brought up, I have spent a whole day in Zoom and it's exhausting. And I would not want any of our students to experience 6 hours of Zoom, even if it's all synchronous with a teacher. It's still quite draining. And I don't think that it's an appropriate approach necessarily for students in terms of increasing their learning.
Okay, great. I appreciate your insight.
I had a question. If you could just elaborate more on the situation of where child welfare gets involved. I'm really concerned in that area. We have a lot of families, and it's hard to tell how many, right? And I know you have data here about potentially 700 students who identified in terms of being at risk of not attending their sessions. So I don't know if you have a breakdown of how those 700 went in terms of contact, if we were able to contact all of them. Again, this is, I saw on one of the slides, it's all hands on deck, and that just not only means our NVUSD community, but I know there's experience here in the room with working with our nonprofits, but there's also many other organizations like Child Start that does home visitations, and they do work with children 0 to 5, but those kids also have older siblings in the district, and they provide additional support in terms of trying to be there for the family under these circumstances, right? We have to remember that around 54% of our kids are enrolled in the free reduced lunch program. Families are in that low income bracket. If you're in that low income bracket, more than 30% of your income is going on rent, so they're rent burden, and then loss of job and so on, and childcare. I just wonder at what level, and I love how you said it. Our Assistant Superintendent Andrew Jennings about compassionate approach, because I think we're going to need a lot of that. I've already through a network that we are doing work around the mental health of our parents, and with the First 5 NAPA network with a cohort of leaders. And one of the, we had conducted empathic interviews, and one empathic interview was a mother who straight out said how concerned she was that she would eventually be that person that would have child welfare called on her, because she's got no one at home really to look after her, making sure her kiddo, or not, I don't know exactly the situation, but she's just really concerned about that. So instead of, she's more fearful than positive at this point and trying to navigate that. So I'm really worried about that. I don't want the word to get out, because already someone in a group already shared, a mother shared this concern and this fear, and I find that really concerning, because we want this to be a place that our parents can trust, and feel like their kids are not going, the immediate thought of this parent is like, are my kids going to be taken away? And we don't want that to be the message. So how are we continuing to be more proactive? I understand with the parent liaisons, but I just, I want us to also keep thinking of working outside the box, right? And partnering and continuing to work more with others. So that's just a real concern that I have. I really, really worry about that, having families reach that level where now they're being referred to child welfare.
Vice President Gonzalez Martis, I want to clarify, when we say child welfare and attendance, we're talking about our own district staff that's made up of social workers and attendance clerks that would follow up with families. And like I said, a very compassionate approach. It's really about finding out what the barriers are. And that's the expectations from the state, is that we work with families to find out what the barrier is for the students to accessing the education. And if it's childcare that they need, then we can, you know, have referrals for them for childcare. If it's connectivity issues, we can see about getting them what they need for technology. So that's when it says, I think sometimes, I think the child welfare is like as if it was a referral to like child welfare protection.
Yeah.
And that's not what we were saying. We're saying our own child welfare and attendance department, that they would be followed up on those.
So there you go. I think the name is confusing. I don't know if that's something that we can proactively work on. I don't know how that works, but when I understand that now, and actually I should have caught that, but it's part of this, right? There's so much information. I do know what you mean now, but for a parent out there who doesn't understand all the different departments and titles, it could be very confusing. And so this parent thought she was going to be referred to the county child welfare department, which is where my thought was going to. So I think
I made the same mistake as well in a meeting. As someone's had, and I thought, oh, our child welfare? No, oh no, this is county child welfare.
Yeah, people are not going to be able to distinct that. So it's just something to think about. And I don't know how we can go around that. It could be just a matter of terms and language, and making sure we're speaking the same things. But it's a concern that I've seen come up now.
Thank you. That's really helpful. The last thing we want is for parents to be fearful of us. You know, we really want to make sure they understand we're here to help, and we will do what we need to do to make sure they have what they need.
Thank you. Okay, I think those were all my questions. Any other questions from the trustees?
No, I really want to recognize the team orientation of the Instructional Support Services Division. You saw how they came collectively across their departments to bring forth a comprehensive presentation around the efforts it took to launch school, that we're not thinking myopically just about certain elements of students' education in this robust distance learning format, but we're thinking across the system, we're thinking across student needs. And that requires the departments in the division to really articulate special education, working closely with curriculum and instruction, you know, general education, you know, student support services, child welfare and attendance, all those pieces, intervention and prevention. And so I want to recognize their work. They are all mostly new. Not all of them are new, but most of them are new to their positions. And so they've just really, really hit the ground running. And we see the evidence of that. And what I think has also been really powerful is their ability to collaborate with our site principals to build solutions that are actually going to work for the users out at our school site. So thank you, Pat, to you and your team.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, we can't thank you enough. All right, now on to item I1B. NVUSD blended learning and online assessment tool for the 2020-2021 school year and beyond.
All right. That's me again. Good evening again. My name is Sarah Knox, and again, I'm the Director of Prevention and Intervention Services. And I'm happy to join my colleague from Business Services, Director Peter Aboud, who is Director of Data and Assessment Services, to share the results from our recent collaborative efforts to provide effective teaching and learning solutions for educators during distance learning and beyond. Next slide. Thank you. We entered this work with a shared vision, which was to provide educators the tools that they needed to ensure high quality teaching and learning in both virtual and in-person learning environments for the 2020-21 school year, but also beyond that. Next slide. And our ultimate goal is that each student in our organization would be able to make at least 1 year's growth every year. Next slide. In order to partner for success, we began this process by listening and learning to practitioners, including our site administrators, working closely with them, as well as teachers on the front lines, in order to engage in some planning discussions that were solution oriented. We wanted to fix some of the gaps and the holes and curate the tools that we have, adding new ones as needed and sunsetting ones that weren't working for us anymore. Our goals for this process were to ensure collaborative decision-making, equitable access, as Pat alluded to earlier, to robust teaching and learning and assessment tools across all of our sites and classrooms, to achieve coherence across the system, to carefully curate and streamline the assessments that we have, and to make sure that those assessments provide practitioners and our system with timely, actionable data. Next slide, please. So first, I'll be sharing more detailed information about each of our newly adopted learning platforms and how each of these platforms can potentially improve student achievement. Then I will toss to Director Aboud, who will report on our new assessment tools. Next slide. Thank you. So when we were looking at either enhancing or adding blended learning tools for the 2021 school year, we thought about specific needs and then looked for solutions to meet those needs. So the first need that we had was around increasing student engagement and active participation during blended learning. So we selected several solutions, selected several tools that were going to give us solutions to that need. So the first tool that you see there is Pear Deck. And Pear Deck is an interactive presentation tool that teachers use to actively engage students in individual and social learning. Pear Deck is accessed by students through Clever. It has Clever integration, and Clever is our single sign-on that we use. It's our gateway for students and teachers to access all tools and programs. So in Pear Deck, students engage with content that's in Google Slides presentations in real time, either during synchronous or asynchronous learning. So instead of just watching a PowerPoint or clicking through it, you actually engage with the material that you're being presented. The next tool is Edpuzzle, and Edpuzzle is an assessment-centered tool that allows teachers and students to create interactive online videos and embed open-ended or multiple choice questions, audio notes, tracks, and comments on that video. So instead of just passively watching a video, you're engaging with it. The next tool that is helping with engagement is Kami. And Kami allows you to take any existing document, including scanned PDFs, ebooks, publisher supplied PDFs, worksheets, and more. And students are able to write, draw, type, annotate, comment, enhance that document. So again, allowing students to be able to, because we're at home, we're in a remote learning environment, interact with some of the print materials that are not digitized yet. Last, we have Screencastify, and Screencastify is a Chrome browser extension that allows teachers to record their screen, their face, their voice, and more, and share those videos, those lessons and other video recordings with their students. Next slide, please. In addition to increased engagement, we also had a need for increased security, accessibility, and usability. And so we have several solutions that we selected. I spoke about Clever earlier. Clever is that single point of access that enables students and their families to just jump right into a portal that will take them to all of the tools that they need for distance learning. So we are all together collectively this year directing all of our students to start with Clever as the gateway into their classes. With Zoom this year, we all know Zoom, but with Zoom this year, we have purchased a licensed version as a district, which enables us to have increased security or enhanced security through the single sign-on integration with Clever. We no longer have time limits, which we would have if we weren't on a licensed version, and it allows us to record to the cloud, which we already have utilized during our distance learning lab. One other cool feature of our licensed version of Zoom is that we now have Zoom polling, where you can do quick interactive polls to engage the group that you're working with on Zoom. Seesaw is the next tool that I want to talk about, and it's a platform for student engagement. So teachers empower students to create, reflect, share, and collaborate using photos, drawings, text, PDFs, and links in these digital portfolios. So with premium access this year, we have unlimited space, family access, and clever integration. Google Classroom is the version of our learning management system that our students in grades 2 through 12 are using. So Seesaw and Google Classroom are the two main learning management systems that our students will be working in this year. Next slide. The next need that we had was to increase differentiation through individualized and adaptive software platforms so that students, all of our students, can make 1 year's growth each year. So we've added several solutions, several tools that will help us achieve that. My colleague, Dr. Rossetti, spoke earlier about iExcel and Unique and how those are specific targeted programs for our students requiring unique supports and services in special education. Benchmark Universe is a tool that is part of our part of the suite of programs that we use for English language arts at the elementary level. And we are purchasing licenses for Steps to Advance through Benchmark Universe, which the online version of Steps to Advance, which will provide scaffolded, targeted online intervention support for elementary students needing unique supports and services that are not in special education. The next program that I wanted to talk about is Dreambox Math, which is new this year. Dreambox Math is an online supplemental math program that is both engaging and proven to boost students' math performance. The Dreambox platform provides students with individualized lessons and differentiates by accelerating or remediating based on ongoing assessments that it's delivering to the students. This platform also provides our teachers with actionable data that they can use to form small group and one-on-one differentiation for students. Last but not least, we are moving forward with Edgenuity, and Edgenuity provides tremendous resources to support Edgenuity provides tremendous resources to support a standards-based approach to our high school courses. Teachers will be able to select standards-aligned assignments and activities that support the work that they're doing with their students daily. And I left one off, so I'm gonna go back. Imagine Language and Literacy is the little robot guide that you see there. And that is an adaptive learning solution that accelerates reading and language proficiency for students in grades pre-K through 8. And it is designed to supplement core literacy instruction by providing daily practice in all 4 domains of literacy: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So this year, new this year, we have licenses for all of our English learners in NVUSD. This program can also be used for native English speakers as well to support students needing extra scoops and targeted support with language arts. Next slide. We referenced Mystery Science earlier this evening, and a final need that we had was to continue our next generation science standards program exploration. We were in the middle or just about to be finishing up, wrapping up a NGSS curriculum adoption last year. And so we had a need to continue that before we move forward with selecting science programs, because it was going to be so challenging to implement those programs that we were planning to adopt in this distance learning environment. So we're continuing the course with Amplify Science and Discovery Education Science textbooks for middle school and high school respectively. And then Mystery Science is our temporary solution for elementary science curriculum. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Director Peter Aboud, who's going to talk to you about our new online assessments.
Thank you, Director Knox. Good evening, trustees and Dr. Musetti. As Director Knox said, my name is Peter Aboud, and I am the Director of Data and Assessment Services. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this assessment update. I believe that this unique school year will present us with opportunities to strengthen our assessment system to serve students even more effectively. You'll notice on tonight's agenda that we will be asking the board to take action and approve our recommendation for STAR assessments. More on that later on in the presentation. Our classrooms have been physically empty since March, and I know that we all miss having students physically in front of us. While we did our best to provide learning experiences for students at the start of the pandemic, we know that the reality is that many students have unfinished learning from the spring. There is a strong need for assessment data to help teachers and administrators understand where the learning gaps are and to provide actionable data for teachers to utilize in their instructional planning. Some of the assessment tools we currently use do not provide this rich data. Students also need access to assessment tools that can be taken physically while in the classroom and also from home with little support, depending on whether students are participating in remote learning or present on our campuses. Assessment tools are needed which are quick and do not cut into the already limited instructional time. Next slide, please. At this point, we are still expected to administer the legally required assessments. The initial English language proficiency assessments for California, or LPAC, is still required for students who indicate a language other than English on the home language survey within 30 calendar days of enrollment. The state is in the process of approving options to allow for remote testing. I am pleased to say that over the last 2 weeks, we launched a centralized testing center at the Old River School campus and tested approximately 275 transitional kindergarten and kindergarten students while adhering to safety protocols. Assessing each student takes approximately 30 to 40 minutes each, so we know that testing these students will greatly reduce the responsibility on elementary schools to test students during the busy start of the school year. In the absence of this testing center, some of our elementary schools would have needed to test over 50 students in a short period of time. There will also be the option to administer the Spring 2020 summative LPAC assessment this fall for students who have the potential to be redesignated as English language proficient. I'm working with my counterparts in the Instructional Services Division to identify which students would benefit from taking this assessment. At this point, we are also still expected to administer the CASP, CAST, as well as the alternative assessments and physical fitness testing in the spring, and we are awaiting additional guidance for how to best do this during the pandemic. We are learning what we can about administering these assessments and are prepared to be flexible. Next slide, please. The STAR assessment suite includes STAR reading and STAR math assessments that are similar to the RI and MI assessments. There is also an early literacy assessment, which assesses foundational reading skills and numbers and operations, STAR CBM, or curriculum-based measures, to probe deeper into specific skills as needed for our youngest students, and also STAR in Spanish. Next slide, please. STAR assessments are quick and typically take 20 minutes or fewer to complete. Assessments are conducted online and can be easily completed at home. Additionally, the STAR assessments program easily syncs with Clever, our single sign-on portal, so no additional usernames and passwords are required for students or teachers. Rich data reports are available for students and teachers immediately after the assessment has been taken, which has not always been the case for some of our assessment tools. The assessments are also available in Spanish, a resource that we know will be especially helpful at our dual immersion sites. Our current RI and MI assessments only provide teachers with a single data point. As you can see from the sample report, STAR reading and STAR math provide a number of data points, including the scale score, the predicted score on the CASP, a percentile rank, Lexile levels, and more. Additional reports drill down to specific Common Core domains and individual skills and indicate to teachers the skills that are most appropriate to teach individual students based on their learning progression. STAR also suggests resources and links to support teachers in planning instruction. Data can also be compared across our whole system, TK12. Next slide, please. We are suggesting the following changes to our assessment calendar. eliminating the RI and MI and replacing them with star reading and star math. The RI and MI provided limited data, was not quickly available to teachers to use for progress monitoring, and was not given across the whole district. Star reading provides multiple actionable data points instantly after completing the assessment and allows us to compare data across the system. We are also proposing to eliminate the phonics inventory, DIBELS, EasyCBM, and the IDLE, and replace them with STAR early literacy. Our current early literacy assessment tools are time-consuming to administer, and access to data is delayed. The STAR early literacy tools are quick and administered online and can be followed up with STAR CBM to dig deeper into skill gaps for students who score low on the early literacy assessment. Next slide, please. We will continue to administer the district writing assessment, although we will need to determine the best way to do this depending on which reopening phase we are in during the spring semester. We will also continue to administer the California Healthy Kids Survey. College Board assessments like the SAT, PSAT, and AP exams will still be administered. In the spring, the College Board shifted the way the AP exams were administered, so we suspect there may be additional guidance for these assessments throughout the year. Next slide, please. Our next steps include finalizing and publishing the assessment calendar to principals and the rest of the NVUSD community, which will include the STAR assessments pilot for this year. We were on a short timeline to gather feedback on the STAR assessment suite, so feedback thus far has been limited to some site administrators, teacher representatives, instructional services directors, and special education. Throughout the course of the year, we will facilitate a thorough assessment committee to gather feedback on the STAR assessment suite and plan for assessments in the 2021-2022 school year in support of our district goal. Next slide, please. Thank you, and that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. We'll now go with questions, comments.
I have a quick question on Director Knox's presentation. Peter was able to outline what was coming off the plate and what was replacing it for various things on the plate. Sarah's presentation seemed to talk more about the things we were adding, and I didn't get a strong sense of what may have been coming off the plate.
Thank you for your question. So because we had not had a lot of online tech tools in place for the, that we're going to support with distance learning. Not a lot of things came off the table. The ones that did were more of the assessment tools that Peter alluded to. I guess some of the things that you could say were coming off the table were more site specific implementations of things like, for example, ST Math was something that we as a school at Northwood were using for math, and that was a program that was used probably at a handful of school sites, and so it was more sort of spotty or patchwork implementations of various solutions that had been decided at the site level, and so those things fell off and were replaced by coherence and consistency across the organization in order to ensure equity of access to all of these programs, because a lot of the schools that had those programs were funding them with parent club funds and other things that other schools might not have access to. So we wanted to ensure equity of access to tools that were going to help students be able to work at their own pace and have individualized differentiation, whether it's going above their grade level and working above their grade level, or working a few grade levels below their own. And so there weren't a lot of things that fell off as a system, I guess, if that answers your question.
It does, and thank you. I guess I'll close with just two comments. When you're working remotely, everything in varying degrees takes a little bit longer. It's just not the same thing as being in person. So I want to encourage you, and it sounds like you've gone down this road, to be thoughtful and assess the value of each incremental tool or assessment because it always seems to take a little bit longer than you think. And, you know, as we're communicating with the various audiences, teachers, parents, students, make an effort to be clear what's mandated, what's optional, and how to choose if there's more than one tool that accomplishes some goal. Because what I don't want to hear 6 months down the road is the board made us do this. The board generally speaks ex cathedra relatively infrequently and generally not on an instructional tool. So, you know, we've gotten off to a good start trying to communicate and provide a mental model of what all these tools are doing to our parents. And I would just encourage that sort of communication to continue as we go through the year, because mostly you got to hear something 3, 4, 5, 6 times before it sticks. And I imagine that's going to be true of our parents.
Thank you, Trustee Shunk. And I just wanted to add, I completely agree with you, and we will definitely work to continue to communicate the how and the why of each of these platforms. One of the ways that we kicked off this year by doing that was by including this description of each of the platforms and the tools in our parent guide that was just shared with parents. So it has a detailed list, and in the parent-facing version, it also talks about frequency of use and goals related to usage.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that, and I think it's great to be explaining to people, because, you know, the parents are at home trying to, you know, go to work, run the family, do everything. So anything we can boil the ocean down and simplify it for them, I'm sure will be much appreciated.
Absolutely, and a lot of those tools that the engagement tools that I spoke of are ones that are going to be teacher facilitated during synchronous instruction. So I know it seems like a long list of tools, but a lot of them are not going to be a student having to, you know, try to figure it out along with their parent by themselves. So we are definitely looking forward to monitoring how these tools you know, support our teachers and students, and see if, you know, evaluate their usefulness for us as an organization. Thank you.
And I'd also just like to add, thank you, Sarah, Director Knox, that the part that we were missing was the support for the asynchronous learning time. And so the majority of these tools are for that time. We didn't have things that students could do at home that supported the asynchronous learning time. And so that's why those were there. And I want to also echo what Director Knox said around, we will be evaluating, you know, routinely the use of these tools and the effectiveness of them before we, you know, as we go through the year and as we plan for next year.
So I have a couple of questions. I didn't quite understand the Edgenuity program. What was that exactly, and how do the teachers and students interact with Edgenuity?
So Edgenuity is it's a platform that's specifically for high school. And so their teachers are able to select standards aligned assignments and activities from the platform and then assign them to students. That it's in the assignments that they're providing are going to support the work that they're doing with the students. So again, it's supporting that asynchronous learning time with a curriculum instead of students having like a textbook they're working on. And I see Peter wanting to chime in. I saw him turn on his screen for a second. I'm sure Director Hartnack has something to add onto that layer, but essentially it's providing them something that can be a curriculum to assign specifically for the asynchronous learning time.
I can provide a little bit more context.
Thanks,
and
Peter.
I think this is going to be something that Assistant Superintendent Andrew Jennings will be bringing forth. But really, and I think I do agree with Director Knox in her assessment, that this is a support for that time in the asynchronous environment. So consider yourself an AM student in the secondary environment, and what are you doing during that PM time? And so there are, again, a number of ways where we can accomplish that. One of them is teachers providing, resources on their own. I think right now we're really trying to make sure that our teachers are focusing on what's critically important, which is instruction, and to not necessarily have to be burdened by planning for something that they've never experienced before, because that is a tremendous ask, as Trustee Water mentioned earlier, in regard to the workload on teachers. And so we're really hoping to provide something for a temporary basis that allows for them, and this will be used, and Trustee Grassi, I think this is a good question, because it will be used in a non-traditional way. The Edgenuity is traditionally used as a standalone, something you might use in a homeschooling or in a credit recovery environment. But as a supplementary resource, it can be very valuable in this kind of environment, because it allows for you to choose, and it doesn't direct instruction. It doesn't necessarily say that teachers have to do something in a very prescriptive way, but rather they're able to say, I want to engage in this topic, in this standard that my grade is assessing and is required to present to students, and to provide them with a number of resources, be that an additional teacher providing additional instruction around a standard. And again, when I say standard, that's we have to remember that's how we look at things now. And so when you think about an English class, you think about standards being, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And those are critical elements to being an educated person. When you think about history, it relates to analytical skills, and you can provide a number of verbs there that relate to those analytical skills. And so what Edgenuity does is it provides a number of resources. And again, be it a teacher providing a lecture, be it an assessment around a certain skill in regard to the standard that is being assessed in the curriculum. And so it's not necessarily content-based, but it does, again, provide a tremendous resource for what happens during the second half of a student's educational experience. And that can provide something that's a little bit more across the system, that it's a little bit more equitable. And it provides a very similar resource and very high quality as well. And I appreciate the question.
Thank you. So my next question, and I might be channeling my inner Trustee Water here, but where in all of these applications are we getting novels into students' hands, and rather than just excerpts, so that they can participate in reading actual books?
I can speak to that as well. One of our big interests in moving forward is to provide students with all the resources that they need to be educated in this environment. And that requires us to really look at and analyze the resources that we have. And sometimes that means the resources that we have in print do not match the resources that we have accessible to us in the online forum. And so there are a number of resources that we have to support what you're talking about. And there are very clear and important opportunities for students to engage in expository texts and shorter texts. But to your question, students do have an incredible experience when they're able to engage with their peers and with their teacher around longer texts that have typically socially relevant meanings. And that's why we read novels, is because we try to present, these ideas that are explored by these authors and relate them to our modern times. And it's sort of a combination between our English department and our history department. That being said, to cut it short, it's really important that our students are able to read broad things, and our plan includes distributing novels to all of our students on a rotating basis so that they're able to read long texts. But also what was mentioned earlier is that we have a plan around a literacy initiative to make sure that students during the middle of the day have time off the screen and able to engage in whatever they're interested in, be that texts that are in the literary canon, texts that should be in the literary canon or texts that they are interested in.
And to add on to that, Director Hartnett, students also have, if they are not able to go to the library or they're not able to have independent reading, which, you know, as a former high school English teacher, along with Trustee Water at Napa High School, we know that independent reading, daily independent reading is very important to our students. And so we have Sora, which is an app that students will be able to access through Clever. That's a library app that enables them to discover and check out ebooks and audiobooks from their school, both for class assigned reading, so they're getting full text, as you alluded to, and also for fun, for reading for fun, which is also equally important.
And I just want to reiterate that I look forward to bringing to you a comprehensive literacy initiative that will launch in the fall. So you'll hear more about how are we going to get books in the hands of our students, and how Director Hartnett's been working with the Library Services Coordinator, Kate McMillan, to make plans for students to come and exchange books and make sure that the libraries are accessible. So those things will happen, and we'll be able to present that that plan to you hopefully soon.
I look forward to that presentation as well then. I have one last question. What is the district writing assessment? Who uses it, and why do we have it?
You took the words right out of my mouth. We used to have one. I want to hear about this.
Well, and I think what Director or Dr. Aboud was referencing is we had a district writing assessment for K through 2. And a long time ago, I want to say probably about 4 years ago, there was a true district-wide writing assessment for each grade level. That had, for the time I've been in instruction, that has not been the case. So the idea is to bring that back so that we are able to evaluate and sort of see the progress that students make with their writing over the course of their time with us in NVUSD. One of the reasons we haven't had the district-wide writing assessment is the amount of time it takes to score examples like that. So we're going to be working with department chairs and PLCs to see how that work can be embedded in the work that they typically do, so that it's not something that we do at the district level and have this writing assessment and gather the data and nothing ever happens with it, but it's part of the instructional practice of teachers.
All right, I'm a little confused because I thought the slide said that we had one and we were keeping it, but it sounds like you're saying we haven't really had one and we're implementing it. So where kind of are we?
We had one for kindergarten through 2nd grade. It was slated to happen in the spring. It didn't happen in the spring due to COVID-19 and school closures. But for the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I know for sure that there was the K2 district-wide writing assessment. And the reason why they did a writing assessment K2 is because there weren't very many measures for to see where students were at those levels, because there was no CAS score or CAS assessment for them. So that's why the district-wide writing assessment was done kindergarten through 2nd grade. And the plan is to continue it. I mean, to have that K2 assessment continue, and then my hope is to increase it to be K through 12th grade or K through 11th grade. We're still working on that. And we'll work closely with Dr. Aboud.
And so did you also just say that the writing assessment has to be hand scored?
In the past, that's what they did. They would bring teachers together. They would calibrate against each other and score all of they would have a group that would calibrate, and then they would have the students take the writing assessments. Teachers would turn the papers in. Trustee Waters is like saying, yes, let's bring, they would come and all sit in the room together, and they would grade this. They would go through and look at the rubric and look at the writing and give it a grade, and they would fill out a little bubble on a Scantron, and then the Scantron would run through a machine, and that's how they would get a score of a 1, 2, 3, or 4, maybe one for like a score for conventions and another one for content. And so I know we can do something far more efficient as we move forward in the year 2020. So that's the plan.
Okay, so we're going to explore a way that's a little more efficient than lots of people sitting in a room and taking laborious time to grade papers.
To score,
It was great. It was interesting. It was instructive for the other disciplines to see what English teachers did. The tests, I can tell you all about it if you really, really want to know. Trustee Gracia, we can do that one day.
Sounds
Each
like
essay was read twice.
Yeah. Yes. And yeah, I do know it's something that we need to look very closely at.
It does sound like there's room for improvement and efficiency there.
It was really fascinating. It went through various iterations, and I'll tell you about it.
And I think the key is to make sure that it's connected to teacher practice, and that the score, like the scores and the assessments are used by teachers to improve student outcomes, and not just something that's information assessments the information that's gathered and then nothing comes of it other than just say, good teacher, bad teacher, like as a sort of a stick. Like, it should be used as a tool, and that's what an assessment should be. It's a tool, not a stick.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd just like to say one thing before we move on. So I appreciate all the questions and the deep engagement. I want to just make some connections for the community and for the trustees. So the work that you've heard over the course of the last two presentations this evening is really the result of your decision and support as a school board to restructure the Instructional Services Division, which also had an implication for restructuring across the Business Services Division. And so I just kind of want to remind you that there was a lot of intentionality in sort of how we restructured in order to be able to render some of the outcomes that you heard tonight. When we work with this intentionality around student achievement at a centralized system level, systems tend to get better results. And so it was alluded to by Director Sarah Knox. I appreciate Joe Shunk's question. It is important that the instructional team check the analytics and the usage of all of these throughout the course of the year, analyze a return on investment, do follow-up focus groups with teachers to really determine whether or not there's utility and impact there on student achievement. So all of those things are important, but I do just want to highlight some sort of big picture organizational shifts that I hope you've observed amongst the team across the two presentations, and that is that we are creating equity and access. I shared here 2 years ago when I did my 90-day listening and learning tour that I was uncomfortable and dissatisfied with how haphazard the access to different instructional tools were across the district. The Imagine Learning is one example where a district that's almost, over a quarter of our students are English learners. And I was disheartened to hear that only some English learners had access to a tool that is proven to really help with English proficiency. And when asked why, it was because there was so much left to the site to determine whether or not we were going to have something that was going to be available to students. And so then that becomes contingent upon principal decisions. It becomes contingent upon funding. We have variance in funding site by site. And so these are kind of the big picture ideas that I really want you to connect tonight's presentation to, and then you to continue to connect as we monitor the impact of the work that the instructional services team is launching. Last comment, the centralization around assessment as well. There has not been a lot of support around the centralization of assessment. And so when Dr. Aboud alludes to the fact that we created quickly a testing center to make sure that all of our students that were moving through assessments, that all the students that are supposed to get assessed in the state mandated assessment, this is the LPAC, again, I'm focusing on English learners, we're making sure they're all having access to the same testing protocol vis-a-vis coming through that testing center. And then the central office is actually monitoring that those get accomplished. And just in the short 2 years that I've been here, I've already, I had experienced there not being consistency on execution of assessments across the schools. So this is building the infrastructure to ensure that equity and access to not only the instructional tools, but then to also make sure that we have, you know, K-12 vertical alignment. You're hearing about an assessment now that's going to have a power and impact K-12 vertically. So we can talk about students, you know, whether they're a 9th grader or a 3rd grader, we can talk about their instructional levels and start to have those kinds of conversations, not only across schools because of that equitable access, but then also vertically K-12. So this is a big organizational shift, and I don't take it lightly. And it would not have been possible without the heavy lifting that's been happening in the Instructional Services Division, but also in partnership, we did move over data and assessment services over to business with the intention that often, and our instructional team has obviously shown tons of competency, but a lot of the time the data systems fail because there's not sometimes the technical knowledge to launch those things with a lot of precision and strength. And so putting it technology, getting the technical back end, nice backbone of these platforms and these assessments strong in the business services division. So then the instructional services can then utilize that with teachers and students in order to move the student achievement needle. That was the exact thing that we were looking for to capture through the restructuring that you approved last spring. So I just really want to illuminate that for all of you and for the organization at large. So thank you to the teams for their hard work over the last couple of weeks. Again, new in their jobs, doing extraordinary work, leading organizational shifts right out the gate. So I really want to recognize that.
So your comments brought to light another question that I have, which is if we approve this STAR assessment program later this evening, what is the rollout
I can speak to that.
Dr. Bood? Yeah.
Yeah, so great question. And like I mentioned in my presentation, it's been a short timeline, so we don't have a fully detailed rollout plan quite yet. But we do know that it will involve rolling out the assessment calendar, communications to principals. With other assessments, what we typically do is identify a site coordinator at each school to help roll out and coordinate the assessments of the sites. And so we would ask for sites to identify that person. And so there would be training and support that would come centrally to those folks. We would also be working with our district academic specialists who are specialists in literacy and have supported assessments in the past. And we also get, as part of our part of the package with STAR assessments, is there are a number of coaching sessions and access to resources that they provide us over the course of the year. And so we'll need to sit down and be much more detailed about that rollout plan, but we've already started those conversations and recognize the importance of intentionality behind how that rollout looks like.
And then once we do approve, if we do approve this tool, how long do you think it would be theoretically before we would have some initial assessments completed?
So the recommendation from STAR, from Renaissance Learning, which is the organization that produced that, is to give the assessment out 3 times a year, which is initially how the RI and MI was administered. And that's pretty typical with what other school districts who use the tool do. My goal is to have that first round of assessments happen in early to mid-September so that we can have some beginning of the year data early on, and then have a middle of the year administration as well as an end of the year administration. And that would just be the baseline for all students TK-12. And then we would have the option to administer the assessment more often for kids who are taking advantage of intervention programs, or if we wanted to do a little bit more progress monitoring, but the baseline would be 3 times per year.
Peter, I'm assuming that data will help us determine whether students have matriculated to the appropriate programs and the right level across the entire math curriculum to help us assess gaps, how we create program continuity to ensure successful outcomes, kind of all that generic stuff. Do we have the right approach? Do we have problem solving woven into our curriculum at each grade level? Are those the kind of, will that information be able to, that the assessment gets, be able to support those kind of concept ideas?
Absolutely, and I think, and I can always, I can share with you the sample reports that come from STAR assessments, but there's data there that's specific to domains in the Common Core standards down to specific skills in the standards. And so we would very easily be able to see how individual students are doing, what they know, what they don't know, what makes sense next for them in terms of learning progression. And then we could also look at larger groups like classes, schools, grade levels across the system, and just use that data to see how we're doing as a whole.
And I'm assuming that will be compiled at some point and presented to us during one of our math workshops or reading workshops as we progress with that.
We can definitely bring it to those. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be making it now that we have quality K-12 vertical assessments in this way, again, across the organization with consistency and coherence. We'll be regularly reporting out to the school board around progress. And so that's again, the other plus of the tool. One of my frustrations as a superintendent when we lack this in our system is that we're always waiting just for the one-time event of the summative state events, summative state assessment events that tend to be towards the end of the year. And that isn't usually that meaningful. I mean, it's important to look at, and summative state measures, accountabilities are one type of measure, but we're positioning the organization to be able to look at assessment and student performance formatively along the way. And that's absolutely critical. So we'll find a mechanism to start making it practice to be reporting to the board how we're using the tools to measure progress throughout the year.
Dr. Massetti?
Yes.
I just wanted to add, Peter was speaking earlier about how we sunsetted reading inventory and math inventory, and phonics inventory, which are products from HMH. And in addition to sunsetting those assessment tools from HMH, we are also sunsetting a few programs that we were using, like Read 180, System 44, and Fast Math, which are all going to no longer be used in our organization. And so that's one of the things that that was actually used system-wide that will be sunsetted as part of this. So I recalled that, and I wanted to point it out as part of this.
Thank you, Sarah.
Right, does that conclude our questions and comments? Fantastic. With that being said, that was a lot of work. Thank you for making it so clear and informative and educational at the same time. At the end of the day, we are a teaching institution, so appreciate it. Okay, we are now moving to J, action items. J1, business and operations. J1A, contract between NVUSD and Promethean for professional development services for the 2020-21 school year.
Move to approve.
Second.
First by trustee Gracia, second by trustee Water. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions or oppose? Motion carries. Thank you. Item J1B, expanded learning MOU between NVUSD and NCOE.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
First by trustee Gracia, a second by trustee Shunk. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I just want to comment that this item was a new and improved MOU on the topic, and I was glad to see it strengthened.
Good.
Vice President Gonzalez-Mars, I think we need to make sure to get the student vote.
I was just going to say that, trustee Gracia. Thank you. Student board representative?
Yes, aye.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And abstentions or oppose? Motion carries. Thank you. Items J1C, STAR Renaissance Online Reading and Mathematics Assessment.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All, Student Board Representative?
Aye.
And before we continue, I'm practicing here is my first board meeting. Any public comment on this item? Please excuse me.
There are no public comments for this item, Vice President Gonzalez Mares.
Thank you. I just rewind back. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I did get a first and a second there, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Teamwork.
We got you.
Item J2, Human Resources. J2A, request to hire school social worker less than fully credentialed.
So moved.
Second.
A first by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Shunk. Student Board Representative?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any abstentions or opposed? Any public comment on this item?
There are no public comments, Vice President Gonzalez Mares.
Next time I'm gonna switch the order. Public comment first. Thank you. Items J3, instructional services. J3A, agreement with UC Berkeley History Social Science Project for professional development services for secondary social science.
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
I have some concerns about this item that I'd like to talk about before we vote.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm concerned that this appears to be an attempt to rewrite history and change our instruction away from a fact-based approach. History is not a changing field, as it has all already happened, and the facts are all rather immutable. I majored in history as an undergrad and believe that attempting to rewrite history to fit present feelings and narratives is an attempt to inject propaganda into our history instruction and paper over the facts. History in the United States and around the world is full of many events that had both positive and negative effects on the people who experienced those events. The events of the past need to be accurately portrayed and not ignored. Similarly, we cannot overly focus on any single side of an issue, but must present it in a fair and balanced way. Some parts of history are particularly ugly, but not all of history is. If we don't present a realistic view of the past, then we'll never really understand how we got to where we are now. Rewriting history to ignore or contravene the facts is completely inappropriate. I worry that this agenda item is attempting to move history away from a facts-based instruction, so I will be voting no on this item.
Can I make a comment?
Of course, Trustee Jankowicz.
It may be true that history does not change, but perspectives should evolve, especially as we consider whose voices and stories have been favored for decades. It's a privilege to believe that our history has been accurately represented, because for many, their stories and narratives have been left out of the national conversation and education for years. How many biographies of historical figures do we have on our shelves? But the same events these historical figures experienced look very different through the eyes of other people from history. Giving our students different perspectives and ways to look at history is a strong reason to frequently and critically evaluate and update our history curriculum. This collaboration could be an important tool in expanding and balancing the perspectives and stories of history. Contemporary relevance prompts all of us to remain abreast of historical developments germane to the content already taught, and to look for new topics around which to develop curriculum. I believe it's a needed approach and could be empowering for all students.
Well said. Yeah, and I'd like to add a little something. Why do we study Latin? Does anybody know? It's not just for vocabulary. It's not just for grammar. It's not just to make people think we went to a fancy prep school in New England. One of the effects of studying Latin, people who study the classics tell me that we become aware of how much we don't know. The texts that are available to us to read are actually just a fraction of what was written, and and it's lost now. And I was thinking, Trustee Grassi and I talked about this, in a very friendly manner. I did go through this curriculum, and it comes from UC Berkeley, and I admit I went there too. So I was very interested in it.
Go Bears.
Yeah, go Bears. One of the things they have in there that's really fascinating is, okay, as you all can tell by my accent, I grew up in the South, the American South. I will tell you, if I hadn't read Gone with the Wind when I was 9 years old, I never would have known that Lee surrendered at Appomattox. I mean, they just managed to just brush that over. And say what you will about Gone with the Wind, it was very clear that the South lost that one. And you all know that I'm part Native American. So when my father grew up on the reservation, and when I would read about the theory of the frontier, Frederick Jackson Turner, the frontier was now closed. It was over. Well, yeah, actually, no, there were some very troublesome Indians still cluttering the place up. Some of them were my family. I mean, it's just all in your perspective. And I don't look at this. I looked at a lot of really interesting lesson plans. First of all, they've got a protocol for deliberative discussions, which we should probably all take out and study, because it'll keep us from getting into hair pullers when we disagree. I mean, I looked at that and I thought, this is a good thing. Everyone should be using this, particularly in the next few months. And it's great for high school kids to have it. And I would really love to hear Carla's perspective on this too. And they even had one lesson plan that's about Washington High School in San Francisco and the controversy about the mural with the dead Native American and with George Washington buying slaves, and should it be covered up? And it's a wonderful lesson plan. And a teacher here could use our local discussion about the Alan Shep's mosaic fountain down at the Hat Building that has caused so much local controversy. It's been vandalized a couple of times, in fact. So I was looking at this as a tool that really could enlighten people, and the different and I'm also, in many ways, I'm a cultural conservative. I think that I want to make sure that the projects do not eliminate the possibility of a research paper being written. I don't think that this is meant to be slavishly followed. I think that these can be jumping off points. It allows for a lot of creativity with teachers. And the other thing that, there's just such a variety of things, of lessons in there, so intriguing. And it really reminded me of, my teaching days, and how I would, like the novel Beloved. I love teaching that novel because the experience, this is when a work of fiction can complement a historical document. And if you don't think you can handle reading a big fat novel by Toni Morrison, well, you can read the poem, The Middle Passage by Robert Hayden, in which he constructs using 3 or 4 different historical documents, real documents. And I think that I just think this could be a real opportunity for our students, and make it relevant to, I think I think young people, particularly today, would respond to it, because, and that doesn't mean that we're not going to learn, 1492 and 1619 and 1776. I mean, those are all the facts that we need to know. We need to know those years, or we're not educated. But I spent quite a few hours wandering through this, and I was thinking, well, I would enjoy taking part in that. And they have something where students can contribute their COVID diaries, and they'll be immortalized in a file. And it's not just Berkeley, it's Sac State is involved in this too. So there's just so many, it's very interactive, so I would recommend anybody going through this. And And I want to, if we do adopt it, I'd like to I'd like to keep track of it and talk to my history teacher friends, and see how their experience is. I mean, I'm actually pretty enthusiastic about it, but I agree that we need to have certainly we need to have writing and that sort of thing. I mean, it's not just going to be all standing up and speaking, which is great. Okay, but I'm interested in, what does Carla think? Okay, well, what do you think, Jose?
In my undergraduate years at UC Davis, I was a research assistant for 3 professors. And as many of you know, my degrees are in psychology primarily. But one of the professors I was an assistant for was a history professor. And I've mentioned him before. He just passed away last year. His name was Dr. Juarez.
Yeah.
And he was considered an expert on historical theory and an expert on the Catholic Church in the Southwest and an expert in the history of the Southwest. So as a psych major, I probably received some of the best training in history and research of history that any student could ask for. And what he told me, one of the most important things he told me about history was that history is very often presented as a straight line from the past to the present. What happens is that line is narrowed based on perspective. When I taught history at the college, I was a history professor at the college, and I taught primarily Mexican-American history. I made my students buy 2 textbooks. One was a standard US history textbook, and the other was a history of the Mexican Americans in the United States, because you can't teach one without knowing the other. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to broaden the perspective of history. I get really annoyed when efforts like this are characterized as rewriting history or erasing history, because you can't do that, And so I would agree with you on that point, David, that you can't do that. That you can relate to history based on your perspective. But so what I try to do, so the 2 major African American diasporas that took place in the United States are very seldom covered in our history. The 3 major immigration movements from Mexico into the US, not covered. The fact that only 7 of the 128 people who died in the Alamo were actually native Texicans, not covered. The fact that I lived through, and there are pictures of me in my cowboy suits playing Texas Rangers. The fact that Texas finally recognized the fact recently that the Texas Rangers were the tip of the spear in leading to Mexican genocide in the 1800s. So and I agree with you again, David, that there's a lot of really good stuff that happened in our history, and that we should and the issue becomes the belief that if we expand the perspectives, if we include new perspectives in history, that that one side's going to be good and the other side's going to be bad. At this point, it's history. They are facts, and I can't imagine sending our students through an education and not allowing them to see themselves represented in our history lessons and the contributions. In 1985 at the college, we started a movement to try and get a multicultural gender studies, women's studies graduation requirement. It took us 10 years. And during that 10 years, the resistant part of the faculty was really talking about the collapse of of classical education as we know it, because we were introducing a new perspective on the history of the United States, when all we were doing is just introducing, more truths.
Right.
So, it's not propaganda. It's facts, like you say. Berkeley is what, the 4th best rated history department in the country, which includes private schools. So I would trust them to put together a plan with our input to represent the history to our students. So I will vote for this. In fact, I'll vote twice for this, David.
So I don't have a problem with expanding perspectives. Any good history professor will tell you there's never just a single factor that leads to any historical action having been taken. We don't live in a one variable world, right? There's always multiple things that are the cause of events in history. My concern is that we just not move away from fact-based instruction and we maintain a relevant fact-based instruction.
I'm sorry. As you've mentioned before, history is fact. You can't move away from a fact-based instruction if you're planning curriculum around facts. And again, having been a protege of Dr. Juarez, I don't like feel-good curriculum. I don't feel gets anybody anywhere. What I want is fact-based curriculum, because these classes, much like the ones I taught at the college, will qualify for credit at the university. And if we don't prepare our students for university level instruction or learning, then we're not doing them a favor. And I would hope that as we move through this, even after I have left the board, that we make sure that the curriculum that's developed through this process is robust, that it's rigorous, and that it meets the needs not only of the students who are going on to the university, but our students who are going out to work. That's it.
I like to add, the way I see this item on our agenda is more of a necessary and essential complement that our history needs, that our current textbooks sufficiently does not portray all of the different perspectives that occurred during a specific time. I do think that what this does, it is part of that quality of education of encouraging and embracing our students to inquire, to ask questions, and for us to be prepared to answer those questions. And more so in the way of you go and figure out how to answer that question, think about it. And so I really like the analytical part of this, of it's not just your textbook, but it complements it with history and the social science aspect of it. Many times I feel that the human aspect is removed from history, and it's just facts and dates and numbers and memorization. But there was a human aspect of it throughout history the entire time. And that perspective and that story needs to be told. And that complements it. Because it makes it real. It makes me think of I always saw history, and my favorite, books of history are biographies, because I feel like you're traveling through time, through someone's eyes and experience, and put yourselves in their shoes, and for one moment, like Anne Frank, feel what she felt. But we need more of those stories. You know, as a Latina in our schools, you know, I needed more stories of not only Anne Frank, but more even culturally relevant, as Trustee Hurtado mentioned. There, a lot of the history I feel like is missing. So I think this complements that. Yes, we need the, you know, the history is awesome when you're trying to grasp how you're learning these series of events that already occurred in the past. It's fascinating. Learn the facts, you know, and for me, the most important part that I connect with it is the human experience, because that series of events occurred because a human being made a decision, a human being made a vote, and that leads to where we are today. And for me, that's essential to one's understanding on how the world works. You know, it's a story of our lives, and you know, and for me, it's critical that we see it through the eyes of others to complement that, because I know as a student, I never saw the textbooks reflect my indigenous side. I never saw the textbooks reflect my Latina Chicana side of things. And I'm just one you know, just one member of the community. There's so many other ethnic groups and diversity that must be reflected here. So having that comprehensive teaching is absolutely necessary, because we're not only here to teach the academic side of things, but also we are helping raise human beings of the future that need to have all the information they can possibly have to make the best decisions they can possibly make for themselves and for their families and for their careers. You know, and for me, it's important to add that what people felt, what they suffered, what was earned and gained and changed, and how people grew throughout the history, because a lot of it is missing. You know, I always struggled seeing an AP, you know, U.S. history book and seeing a chapter on Latino culture, and Cesar Chavez, they portrayed him dressed up for a quinceañera with a zoot suit outfit. You know, I'm like, that's not how that's not the Cesar Chavez I remember. He was out there, you know, working and fighting for farm workers. And so, you know, it's what complements that story, you know, in that kind of inquiry needs to be, that kind of thirst needs to be met with some strong you know, energy and information and flow of knowledge that goes to that. And for me, I'm looking forward for this type of support, not only to reach our secondary levels, but it's absolutely to reach from our TK through 5th grade. You know, I love the aspect in here about amplifying our ethnic studies. I think this is a strong component that will do that. Because more and more we're seeing many of us being dismissed by history. And I think what this does, it just complements it. It doesn't deny the facts, it adds to it. It elevates people's existence that may have been erased throughout the history books. So I'm thrilled about this, really excited about this, and can't wait for it to expand even further. And so, because we want, you know, our students to be the very best, and without, you know, getting to know themselves through the history and where they came from, it does create barriers for students to be where they are. And when we know that ethnic studies can provide that, you know, I say this over and over. I wish I had more of an ethnic studies program back when I was in, you know, at Napa High and a student in the school district, than having to wait until my college years. I think a lot of things could have been different for me had that been embraced and provided. So I'm really excited for this, and I see it more as a complement. It's not taking away anything. It's adding to it because it's missing that color.
I need to just one more thing. Since Dr. Massetti found it necessary to have a shout out to the Bears, I'm going to have a shout out to the Aggies.
I'm gonna have
Aggies.
to, I'm gonna have to second that one.
That's what this
Go
is-
UCD.
That's what this is really about. Trustee Gracia is an Aggie.
Yeah.
Go Ag.
Go Aggies.
Numbered here, Trustee Water.
Yeah, an
It's
Aggie that was
true.
an Aggie that was born out of UC Berkeley.
Yeah, it's true.
Any other? I know our student board representative Carla may want to say something.
Yeah, I just want to kind of add in a little bit of kind of a student's perspective because I know for a lot of my peers, this is something that would really interest them. And I thought of an example. I know at Vintage, they used to offer a race and social justice history class. They had that class and regular US history, so you'd get to choose. And I think this year they eliminated the class just for whatever reason. But I know my leadership teacher, Miss Salas, she was the one teaching it, and she was telling us about how I think it was one of the most like signed up courses on campus. And I think that just goes to show that students are hungry to look at that different perspective of history. And I know for a lot of my peers, we find a lot of kind of more of that kind of history found through social media or through kind of those outlets, when I think that's what we really should be learning in the classroom. And I think it's, especially like in today's age, this could be really relevant. And in such a small, kind of not as diverse town like Napa, I think it's really important to incorporate these kind of studies into our courses and show our students that there's more than just this small town that majority of Latino and white population. So.
You said something. You said in these times. And one of the things that struck me about this, there's a whole packet of lessons, is that how it was able to relate the present to the past. And I had a landmark birthday this past summer. I'm 70 years old, and you know, you can do the math. I've lived through some strange times. These are really strange. This is very unusual, and I think I just sort of, when I was looking at this, I was saying, well, wait a minute, kids are going to like this, because young people are going to like this, because they're going to see that this is unusual, to put it mildly, and you're living in it, and you've got to remember what you thought at the time, because you're going to have a story to tell. I think that's important too. And you know, of course, we had the flu epidemic almost a little over 100 years ago, influenza, and you know, they discussed that too. But I was really intrigued as how they related the present to the past, and because it helps us understand our present. Yeah, you said in these times, yeah.
Well said, Trustee Water.
Good, I don't feel so bad about being 70 years old now.
Yeah, I'm catching up.
I'm gonna live through it.
Okay, any other comments? I should also ask for public comment on this.
There are no public comments on this item, Vice President Gonzalez-Mares.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Okay, seeing that there's no other comments from the board and trustees, can I get a motion on this item?
Also move.
I'll second.
Don't we already have a motion on the table?
Oh, you did? Okay. I'll second it then.
You're right. I don't remember who first and second.
Let him do the first.
So
come on, David, you do the first. Come on,
a first
David.
by Trustee Hurtado, a second by Trustee Water. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, now on to Napa Valley.
I do want to say, the trustees, that the opposing vote did prompt a very rich discussion. So thank you for that discussion. I know the instructional team, as they think about advancing this work, that discussion will stand behind them. So thank you.
See, and we set an example by having a polite, positive discussion.
And just to recall the student vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Magaña. Okay, now on to item J3B, Napa Valley Adult Education Course of Study Adoption.
I'll move the item.
Second.
Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Student Board Representative?
Aye.
Public comment?
Public comment on this item?
No public comments for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Okay. Now on to item J4, School Planning and Construction.
So moved.
J4A, sorry, with SPC number 16.3-20, Inspector of Record Services by M&M Project Inspection at Vintage High School. Path of Travel up to Fields Project.
So moved.
Second.
I had heard a first by Trustee Shank and then a second by Trustee Gracia. All those in favor?
Oh, okay.
Aye.
Student Board Representative?
Aye.
Public comment on this item, Mr. Reese?
No public comments for this item, Vice President Gonzalez-Mares.
Okay, thank you. Now on to item J4B. Request for Inspector of Record Services by M&M Project, Inspection at Silverado Middle School and Redwood Middle School Field Projects.
So moved.
Second.
First by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Shank. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or opposed? Student Board Representative?
Aye.
Any public comment on this item?
No public comments for this item, Vice President Gonzalez-Mares.
Okay, on to J4C, request for consulting services by GED for Northwood DSA closeout.
So moved.
Second.
First by Trustee Gracia, second by Trustee Shank. All those in favor?
Aye.
Student Board Representative?
Aye.
Any public comment?
No public comment for this item, Vice President Gonzalez-Mares.
Now on to item K. We have informational. And items under this action do not require board action. Anything on this item?
Nothing tonight. No informational items tonight.
Thank you. Item L, additional suggestions and comments from board members and superintendent.
I just have one. I'd like to highlight the fact that we have an updated landing page for our NVUSD homepage with the wonderful new logo on it.
Yeah,
Looks great.
it does.
Is that the logo on your shirt, Trustee Gracia?
It is the self-same one. It's also the logo on my water bottle.
All right.
Yeah. And your shopping bag.
Love it. All right, now on to item M for future agenda items.
I think we discussed it a bit at the time already, but I'd love to hear the results of our assessments with this new STAR program when we roll it out.
Ditto.
Dr. Boone and Assistant Superintendent Manguala, let's prepare to bring baseline results to the board in the early fall.
And I've been wanting to add this agenda, but just sort of wanted to have the school start and so on. But I think just a follow up on our, what would, our ethnic studies program look like across, TK all the way through high school. We know there's curriculum, already approved by the state and so on. And what would that look like in terms of our instructional services?
Yeah, so Trustee or Vice President Gonzalez Mares, we're going to be bringing forth a comprehensive sort of launch to the equity policy implementation. That'll serve as sort of our kind of umbrella initial launch around that work. Curriculum will be a component of that, and when we unpack the component side within that, you'll hear the work that Assistant Superintendent Pat Andrew Jennings and her directors will be leading around ethnic studies, implicit bias training. So we'll be bringing that forth. And also we're looking to erect a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force as well to advance that work. So we will be bringing that forward. But first, we'd like to bring to you a comprehensive sort of plan and vision for the broader policy implementation, with curriculum being a component of it.
Great, thank you.
Sounds really good.
Yep.
All right, anything else?
Nothing. You run a good meeting.
Thank you. You'd like to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I think Vera caught who got it first and a second there. All of us. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, student board rep?
Aye.
All right, so you're ready for class tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. And have a great second day of school, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
All right, bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.